Everybody's got a price, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a pod, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a price.
What's up, everybody? It's Marcus D'Angelo, and we are back for another episode of Everybody's Got a Pod. But this week, we were unable to coordinate to do a new episode. Both myself and Ted, as this episode is coming out, are actually in Las Vegas for WrestleMania Weekend and WrestleCon. So, of course, there was really just no time to do one. However, we are still doing something really fun this week. We are looking back into the archives at some early episodes of Ask Ted Anything for another best of episode. And man, Ted and I have covered a lot of ground on those Ask Ted Anything episodes, and we always really enjoy doing them. And again, if you guys haven't listened to some of the earlier episodes, this is going to be new content for some of you. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Ted and I will be back with you next week for a brand new episode of Everybody's Got a Pod. King Kelly is up first, and they ask, who was the best referee and who was the worst? So, Ted, we'll start with the best. Who is the best referee?
Oh, my gosh. That's something that I really paid attention to. But I would say, the Hebner brothers. I mean, I never knew Dave Hebner had a twin brother until he came running out to the ring in that thing that I was doing. Are you kidding me? But no, the Hebners are both really good referees. And, here's a good referee or a great referee is a guy who needs to look like he's very busy, that he's trying to get it all. You keep moving around the ring, and it's like you always got to be at the right place at the wrong time. The summer before I started physically wrestling, I spent that summer as a referee, and I learned a lot by just being in the ring with the guys. I learned a lot about timing and everything else. But I would say the Hebners were the best, and the worst referee. I'm trying to think. Well, I guess they were so bad I can't remember who they were.
One of these.
I don't have a name for you.
All right. Bobby is up next, and he asks, who did Ted like better, Randy Orton or John Cena? All right. So there's kind of an interesting one, Ted. More skilled or more, personality? Who do you think's got it more, essentially, overall?
I'll go with Randy Orton. I mean, Randy Orton, like me, grew up in the business and was very good. He was very good in the ring, and he was very good on the mic. The difference between Orton and Cena and a lot of other guys, I kind of wonder now, because there's a lot of, I would say a lot, but there are several wrestlers that have jumped out of wrestling and landed with their feet on the ground in motion pictures.
Yep.
Obviously the biggest one being The Rock. But I know John has done some movies too. And John Cena's got charisma. I think I liked him. I liked him on the mic. He was good on the mic. His expression and everything. That's a good question.
It is, because it's I think you can make an argument both ways with those guys. They're both really skilled, and certainly both great on the mic, and both have done some acting stuff. Even John Cena certainly done more than Randy, but who knows what's in the future for Randy? So yeah, it's that's a tough question. Good one, Bobby.
But I would say overall, I mean, just where wrestling is concerned, I would probably go with Randy Orton. but now with John having made it in the motion picture industry as well, I mean, good for him. But I mean, I would say if I were just judging on wrestling, I would give the edge to Randy Orton.
I've heard a lot of guys from your generation of wrestlers say that Randy Orton is a guy that you could put him in a time machine and put him in wrestling in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Doesn't matter. He's going to fit in.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got Will Davison, who asks, what were your experiences like around Mr. Wrestling 2?
Mr. Wrestling number 2. He's a good guy, man. I mean, it's kind of like, and he was really good about maintaining the image. It's kind of like, I can't, I can remember the first time that I saw him take the hood off,
mm-hmm.
and I was shocked.
Why?
Because I'm looking at basically an old man who was better in the ring than half the guys in the locker room.
Wow.
He was so good. And it's amazing that he was a ring general for sure. He was really, really good. I would pick him over all of them.
I just looked him up, and he was, you said he took off the mask and you were a little shocked at his age. He was born 20 years before you or Jake or any of your generation of guys. So it's like, man, he was an older guy, and I guess it showed. He had the savvy experience.
Yeah, he had it for sure.
What's it like when a guy is masked? He's kayfabing you guys like in the locker room? He just doesn't remove
Well, no, just the whole thing about a mask is it's like, who is it? And usually most all the guys in the dressing room know who's under the mask, but a lot of times they didn't. And Johnny was pretty good about masking up before he came in and keeping the mask on until he was way out of town or whatever. But the mask is just okay. Who's under the mask, and are we ever going to get a chance to see him unmasked? So
it's interesting because wrestling, especially back in the day, if I can paint a picture for listeners, back in the day, wrestling was A, very competitive, and B, you really didn't know who you could trust in wrestling. And now there's this guy who's coming in and isn't taking off his mask, not really identifying himself. Like, I know if I was about to step into the ring with the guy, I'm kind of putting myself back in the whatever 80s, 70s wrestling. If I was about to step into a ring with a guy, I'm like, this guy won't even show me his face or tell me who he is. Like, can I trust this dude out in the ring? Is he going to shoot on me? Like, I don't know. I think I'd be a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, it's again, if anybody that would shoot on you in the ring, obviously is not doing what he's there to do, would get fired.
Yeah.
That's the deal. So.
Strange business, isn't it? And stuff like that doesn't happen in any other form of entertainment.
No.
All right, Eddie F is up next. What's the weirdest piece of merchandise Ted ever got? So back in the day, WWF was making stuff of like shampoo bottles and toothbrushes and all kinds of stuff for folks. But you were a heel, so I don't know if you got that much merch.
I don't. I can't remember anything. Like merchandise. I just can't think of anything, bro. I mean, it's like, what do they? What I'm looking around my office here. The only thing I could think of that, and they're still making them, are Funko Pops.
Okay.
I don't really I mean, pre-WWF, nothing.
Yeah, I guess you wouldn't have ever had any merch before WWF.
Nothing, Mid-South didn't do that. I mean, I had nothing. And of course, I think probably, and I do have here. I'm gonna get it. This was the first action figure.
Look at that.
Yeah.
All right. You've got
Somebody
your
cut off
very
my
first
nose.
LJN figure. Somebody
Yeah.
bit off the nose.
Or anyway, drew on it or something. But yeah, that was the original.
Now, do you have a lot of your personal action figures and stuff from over the years?
Not really. I mean, I've got some, but I don't have a lot. That's for sure. I'm just looking around here and going, no. The other thing that somebody made for me that is a prized possession, and this sucker is the real deal, buddy. It's an exact replica
Look at that.
of the North American Heavyweight Championship belt,
Yeah.
which is the belt that I defended and was part of Mid-South Wrestling.
That's amazing, dude. Wow.
Yeah, unbelievable.
I'll tell you what, you got to start bringing that to photo ops and stuff. I bet a lot of people would like to get your picture with that.
More people would rather get a picture with the $1 million belt.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Here's what I'm proposing as your new piece of merch. It's the Ted DiBiase squirt head. Looks like you're missing a front tooth, but that's where that's where the water squirts out.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I remember that now.
So that gets my vote. Probably your weirdest piece of merch. Next up, we've got Ryan Green, who asks, what can you tell us about working with David Von Erich? He was earmarked to be the NWA champion before tragically he would pass away.
I think I worked with David one time, and I want to say it was in Tulsa. It was in Oklahoma, I think, and yeah, he was the best in terms of his in-ring ability. I knew those boys. I mean, I probably knew Kerry a little better. Kerry was, Kerry was in his own world most of the time. It wasn't our world.
You mean he was under the influence?
Well, yeah, it just, I don't know. And again, but to his credit, here's a guy who lost a leg or part of a leg, right?
Yep, and that's after losing, I think, two of his brothers.
Yeah, and wrestled.
Yeah, and
went on to wrestle, and I give them a lot of credit. It's the story. I've never seen the movie about them. And quite frankly, I'm not sure I would want to watch it because it would just probably make me angry.
Yeah, or sad. A lot of it was about
well, angry and sad. I mean, sad for them and just angry at Fritz von Erich because he was such a big jerk.
That's interesting because it's, Jim Duggan has said, like, boy, he owes everything to Fritz von Erich. He'd never be in wrestling without him. But I've also heard people say the other side, what you just said, that Fritz was a jerk. So, like, what can you tell us about Fritz?
Well, I mean, I didn't know all that much about him, but just based on what I saw in his boys and the way it was almost like, like my dad didn't tell me that you're going to grow up and you're going to be a wrestler. Basically that's what Fritz did. He told those boys that they were all going to be wrestlers. What if they didn't want to be a wrestler?
Yeah.
I was like, there's nobody who's going to tell me what I'm going to do. I mean, my father might suggest the one thing my dad didn't want me to do was be a wrestler. And it's not because of the wrestling itself, because it was such a horrible lifestyle back then.
Mm-hmm.
Now, oh my gosh, these kids today, and it's like, God bless them, but they work 4 days a week. And I hope none of them ever think they're overworked. Friday night SmackDown, they work Saturday, they work Sunday, and Monday Night Raw, and they go home. Now, I would say the top guys, I know Vince always had like when Cena was the guy. I mean, Cena was running around. He might not have wrestled those other 3 days, but he was going somewhere, doing something, representing the company. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, he was big on Make-A-Wish and appearances and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, but no, Fritz. And I'll be honest with you, I never worked for Fritz, and based on the stories I heard, I didn't want to work for him.
That's tough. And yeah, he was not portrayed very flatteringly in that Iron Claw movie that just came out. And it's interesting for me because I never really learned much about the Von Erichs as I was growing up as a wrestling fan. I was into your generation of guys, and then like the NWO era. So like now all of this is fresh to me. Is Jim is on one side Jim Duggan saying like I love Fritz Von Erich. I wouldn't have gotten into wrestling without Fritz. And then on the other side, I'm hearing you and a few others along the way saying like, man, not always a great guy, and the way he's portrayed in the movie. So it's interesting to hear all these different takes on the guy.
Well, yeah, and I get it that maybe, Jim is grateful because that's where I guess he got his break to get into the wrestling business, was through Fritz. And I would think that's because I think Jim played football at SMU, right?
That was a big part of it. And I think it was after he wrapped up at SMU. I want to say that Fritz approached him and said, hey, I'd like you to come wrestle for me. And Jim said something to the effect of, nope, I'm going to go be a pro football player, and goes and plays for the Falcons, and he plays in Canada. Doesn't work out. And I think he called Fritz back up and said, like, hey, if you still want me, I'm willing. And Fritz welcomed him back, even though Jim kind of blew him off the first time.
Yeah. Well, and I can understand a guy being grateful for the break, but just based on the history of the family, his family and all those boys. I mean, those boys basically, I haven't even watched the movie, but I mean, did it come across in the movie that basically Fritz basically told his boys they were all going to be wrestlers?
Pretty much. The one youngest son who would pass away early as well, and his name is escaping me right now, which is awful, but he wanted to be a musician apparently, and Fritz kind of strong-armed him into being a wrestler.
Yeah. So yeah, I have there's no love lost between me and Fritz. And again, like I said, there were times when I had opportunity. I could have gone to the Dallas territory, and I didn't because I didn't want to work for him.
Next up, we've got Luke, who's got a pretty interesting one, Ted. He asks, there's a lot of talk about Vince McMahon forming his own promotion. Do you think it would be successful, and would you be willing to go and work for him? So that's been the talk of wrestling recently, is that Vince is, he's sold out all of his TKO shares and WWE shares and what have you, and he's got an awful lot of capital built up. Theoretically, who's more qualified to start a wrestling company?
I don't know why he would. I mean, here's the thing. I will always be grateful to Vince. I mean, the biggest break in my career. I mean, the whole deal, the $1 Million Man, Learjets, limousines, all of that stuff. And then since then, it's like I was right at 40 years old when I physically got out of the ring. 30 years. I'm 70 years old now. And they're still making action figures and video games and all that stuff. I would have none of that if not for Vince.
Yep.
And the WWE. And so for that, I'll always be grateful. But, I've been reading some of the things that have been going on now. And it basically, it hurts. It's like I never looked at Vince as like a hero, but I was always grateful, and I'll never stop being grateful. But if a lot of these things that I'm reading are true, then it just sickens me. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
Awful.
Yeah, just awful stuff. And So, and again, 70 years old, going to start a new. I'm 70. That makes him 80, and he's going to start a new company. No, I'm not interested.
You wouldn't be. So if he were to wind up doing it and he said, Ted, I'd love to have you as part of the team here. No interest.
No.
Hard to blame you, especially.
I mean, not just because of what Vince is going through now, but if Vince weren't going through any of that and he sold his company and was going to start a new one, I'm 70 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I don't want to be. It's kind of like wrestling is. I mean, it's like it is your life. If you're in it, it's your life.
Yes.
And it's kind of like, God bless my wife for sticking it out, sticking with me along the way, giving me a second chance when I had blown it and I had been unfaithful. I wrote a book about it. It's what really brought me to a genuine relationship with Christ. But my wife's willingness to stick it out because I was gone so much. Then to forgive me and then believe in me to know that I was now a different man. And of course, you could see that all the time. But no, I mean, it was like I loved wrestling. I'm grateful, but I'm done. I'm done.
And,
I have no desire to get back in the mix like that. At any level.
And life is good for you right now. You get to still go out and have those interactions with fans on weekends whenever you go to a booking or a signing or whatever.
Yeah.
And so you still get to scratch that itch, but you're home, 6 days a week, man.
Yeah.
That's hard to beat.
Yeah.
Do you think that Vince is ultimately going to be erased from WWE history? Kind of like Chris Benoit was.
I would think it would be extremely hard to totally erase Vince McMahon from WWE history. I mean, it's his company. I mean, it's the company he built.
Mm-hmm.
How do you totally erase that? I mean, I know that Paul's in charge now, Triple H, and I think that's good. I think that's a good thing because Paul's a sharp guy, and he's got some fresh ideas. That I'm not so sure, that Vince would have gone that way or not. It's just kind of like the difference is Paul has been a wrestler. Okay, Triple H. He's been a wrestler. He's been in the ring. He's lived that part of the, Vince was never a wrestler. Vince's gift, in my opinion, is he is a tremendous marketer of his product.
Yes.
But he had a lot of help in terms of what they called agents and whatever who helped all the wrestlers during his years.
Yeah, and to your point, it's Vince McMahon not being part of WWE history when like WrestleMania wouldn't exist. Wrestling as we know it today would not exist without Vince McMahon. But it's again the Chris Benoit treatment. You don't say his name on TV, don't ever acknowledge him, never reference even a classic like WrestleMania 20. He had a classic match. It's never referenced. And I could see them doing that with Vince, where they're just like, okay, yep, he's a big part of the history, but we're never saying his name on TV ever again. Like he won't ever be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Isn't that a really weird thought?
It is. Yeah, it is. It's sad. It really is, and I think that when you say, I think that the business has been left in capable hands in terms of, Triple H, there to run things. I mean, he was doing a dang good job down in Orlando. at the training facility and to move him on up and to take the helm of the ship. I think it's a good choice. What saddens me is, a lot of this stuff that's coming out now that's, it's almost like reading the National Enquirer and all this stuff. I mean, I tell you who my heart breaks for is like Stephanie and Shane. That's their dad. I mean, gosh, I don't know if I could ever handle hearing something like that about my dad.
Oh, it'd be awful. I mean, let alone his grandchildren who are still young, college aged, around, they're still at the age where like their buddies or people who don't know them are going to tease them about this kind of thing. And you have to hear this sort of awful stuff about your grandfather.
Yeah.
Like, man, here's a guy that you probably held on this pedestal. Like he's the most important man in the history of this industry. That's my grandfather. And all of a sudden it's like, you probably don't even want to acknowledge that he's your grandfather.
Yeah.
That's a tough spot.
Yeah, very.
Gregory Hubbard asks, what can you tell us about the Fabulous Moolah? Did you hear about the allegations of abuse with the girls that she trained? Did you know about any of that?
Moolah she was the one she was over all the girls.
Mm-hmm.
All if you were in wrestling and you were a female, you worked for Moolah. And, and again, not only was my father a professional wrestler, so was my mother.
Mm-hmm.
And her wrestling name was Helen Hild. You can look it up, Hild. And, she said, my own mother said that Moolah was the shits.
As a person or a wrestler?
As a person.
Okay.
I mean, and all those girls were treated horribly. I mean, that I can't find anybody to say different, to be honest with you. I can't find anybody that would put her over.
There's this great picture of your mom and Moolah working together. So it's interesting to hear that your mom had that opinion of Moolah, where it's like, who's going to know her better than one of her peers, somebody who had to work with her. This isn't a person that was trained by her. This is, your mother was just a person that got to know her on a professional level.
Yeah.
Man, a legendary figure in wrestling, but just not always a great human being, according to what we hear.
Yep.
All right. Let's do one more. We've got this one from Raymond. What's the craziest situation you've been in over your career? Any riots or fans with knives or anything like that?
I can't really say that there's been a crazy situation. We had there was a deal down in Alexandria, Louisiana once. And I can't even remember what caused it. But it was almost like it was a show that started, but that it never ended. It's almost like we, especially if you were a heel, like you were backing into the dressing room.
Oh man.
Gosh, I wish I could remember what that was all about. But
I have to imagine that you, as like a really strong heel, and not to mention a guy that, you turned on JYD in such a nasty fashion back in '82, I believe it was. You must have had a ton of heat and probably had a ton of fans, trying to start shit with you occasionally.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, it's like Bill said, if you're working for me and you're a heel, you better be tough, because if anybody ever kicks your ass, you're fired. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you, hands down, nobody ever kicked my ass. And of course, I tried to stay out of situations like that. I was, fairly careful about where I went, and if I went out with the guys and drinking somewhere, like heels and baby faces, we might be in the same club, but we would be on opposite ends of the club.
Mm-hmm.
But And it was just, if anything were to, if anything were to get started in a bar or something, then kayfabe was out the door, and circle the wagons.
Yep.
But that never really happened. So it didn't have much.
Okay, guys, let's hit the pause button on the show real quick to talk about our fantastic sponsor. Of course, I'm talking about the guys that we all know and love. We're talking about Blue Chew. Ever since we started talking about Blue Chew here on Everybody's Got a Pod, the question keeps coming up from people, does Blue Chew work? Well, look, if you're asking that question, we want you to know that Blue Chew is putting their money where their mouth is by giving you a month for free. Guys, Blue Chew is an online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in a chewable form. The process is simple. All you've got to do is sign up at bluechew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Blue Chew tablets are made in the USA and prepared and shipped directly to your door. And if you want to know the best part, here it is. It's all done online. So what that means is you can forget about all the visits to the doctor's office. You can forget about having to have those awkward conversations, or how about the worst part, waiting in line at the pharmacy. Skip all of it with a little help from Blue Chew. You can take them anytime, day or night, so that you can plan ahead or be ready when an opportunity arises. And what do you stand to lose? You can try it for free for a month, and we think that you're going to love it and your partner's going to love it. You could be missing out on the best sex of your life without even knowing it, just because you haven't given this a shot. It's a free service. Why not just try it? And if you don't like it, okay, forget it. You don't have to try it ever again. We always say that first impressions are important, but how about lasting impressions? Build up your confidence with Blue Chew, and they're giving you confidence where it counts the very most. Guys, Blue Chew wants men rock hard. That's what they tell me. That's their mission. They will not stop until every man is bricked up like a brick house, till every tent is pitched, till every rod is raised. Discover your options right now at BlueChew.com. And guys, we've got a special deal for you, our listeners. Again, you can try Blue Chew free. All you've got to do is use our promo code EGAP at checkout, and then just pay $5 shipping. That's it. Just go to BlueChew.com, use our promo code EGAP to receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we want to thank Blue Chew for sponsoring Everybody's Got a Pod. Well, the first question we got this week is from Pete Holm, I think is how you say it. He says, "Hi, Mr. DiBiase. I couldn't make it to Newcastle to the Comic-Con. Did you enjoy the UK? And are you planning any future trips to UK Comic-Cons?"
Well, I'm sorry you couldn't make it, buddy. And yeah, I had a great time at the Comic-Con, and right now I don't think I have anything. I don't think I have anything on my calendar going back to Europe anytime soon. So, but I mean, inevitably, God willing, and I'm still alive, eventually I'll probably make another trip across the pond, hopefully.
Ted, have you always enjoyed going over to the UK and kind of seeing the sights, or was it all business anytime you go over there?
Oh yeah. I mean, I liked going over there. I mean, the fans are great, and it's kind of like there's one of the company's name I think is called Monopoly. And those are the guys that have booked me. I mean, they had me in I think Liverpool one time, and I can't remember the other place, but good guys. Good guys, and you make your deal ahead of time, and you do what you do. So, yeah, I guess the only time I wouldn't want to go to England, I guess, or the UK in general would be winter. Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard it can get a little bit nasty over there. And by the way, speaking of the UK and you being over there, there's some fantastic photos out there. And I think they were in WWF magazine back in the day of you and Sherry Martel in Ireland. And it's got just great photos of you two kind of walking the streets surrounded by fans, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool to see, you across the pond and in Europe in general, just doing your thing and living the gimmick back in those days, right?
Yeah. And actually there's a guy who I met over there, and he's he's a really good, nice guy. I mean, it's kind of like I'm trying to let me go over here. Yeah, the guy's name. His first name is Alan. I won't say his last name, but he told me. He said, Ted. He says, when you were over here, and I really can't remember exactly what I did for him. That or I stuck up for him or whatever. But what he said, he contacted me and he said, look, he says, I want to thank you again, because, at a time when I was at that jam, you stuck up for me, and it had to do with the wrestling business, must have. And he says, but I just wanted you to know that I am doing very well now. And he says, as a result of that, he says, I would like to invite you and your girlfriend, or if you're married, your wife, to come to Ireland on my dime and spend a week here, and we'll take you everywhere, show you everything you need or want to see. And Melanie and I are going to do that. Isn't that great? That's just awesome.
Amazing, man.
Yeah, the guy's name is Alan, and we are going to go over there, and I guess it's like probably fly on a Monday, and then October the 8th is a Tuesday, probably arrive, and then we're gonna go through October the 15th, October 8th to October 15th, and then come home, and I guess he said one of the places he says I hope you're going to really enjoy is it's the Guinness brewery.
Oh man, all right.
Where they make Guinness, the beer.
You're gonna have to throw any diet you might be on right out the window, buddy. Guinness is worth it.
Well, and I told him, I said, look, I said, I appreciate that, and yeah, I like to have a beer or two every now and then. I said, but I'm not, and I never was oh my gosh, like my old friend Dick Murdoch. I mean, he didn't go anywhere without a case of beer, and he had the belly to prove it.
Now, are you a Guinness fan or just?
Oh, I like Guinness. Yeah, I do.
Man, that beer is hard to beat. I don't know if it's a good, if it's hot and, sticky outside. I don't know if a Guinness is the right choice. But, man, you're sitting in your house on like a winter day and a big, thick Guinness. Come on. Nothing better. Next up, we've got Graham Milano, who asks, if you could have picked a different bodyguard for your character, who would you have picked? So we'll set Virgil aside if you couldn't do Virgil, but you can pick somebody else from that era. Is there anybody that stood out as a guy you might want to have on your side?
Not really. I mean, I'm trying to, think of the guys that were in a manager role. I mean, name some of them for me. I don't even.
Well, I don't even know if it would have to be necessarily like a manager. Like the first person that came to mind for me was Haku. Like, how cool would it have been to have him in like a tuxedo and all of a sudden he's one of your guys and you can send him out to eat people alive.
Oh, wow. Yeah, but I mean, you would never see him in a manager role anyway. I mean, look at the guy,
right.
It's kind of like, I don't know. I just don't think that would ever be the case, and I don't know. I really don't know. It's kind of like,
I guess you with Bobby Heenan probably could have been a lot of fun.
Yeah, Bobby Heenan would have been a good one. I mean, Bobby was great. I mean, he was, oh my gosh, he was funny on TV and he was even funnier off of TV, but a real good guy. But yeah, Bobby Heenan would be a good choice.
Just like a really quick-witted guy. But, I'm looking back at this question from Graham and it was actually a different bodyguard. So not necessarily a manager. This has got to be like a tough guy. So I don't know. Maybe Haku would have been a better choice.
Yeah, maybe.
Toby Clark is up next. He asks, "Did you ever think that you're not buying that because it's too expensive? And what was it? So was there ever any? He's asking this question like you're actually the $1 million man. Like, oh well, I'm
Yeah,
not going to buy that despite all my millions. So
yeah.
let me ask this question a different way. Ted, when you started making really good money in wrestling, what was a big ticket item that you purchased for yourself?
Oh my gosh. Um, well, my wife and I have lived here in Mississippi like for 43 years now, and our first home was in a nice little neighborhood, in a suburb of Jackson, Mississippi. And then it's kind of like then we went to another one, another home in another neighborhood. It's almost like the progression. And I guess once I became the $1 million man, the third home that we bought or not bought built was probably one of the because now I'm the $1 million man, and this is in a very nice neighborhood. It was a 2-story. Oh my gosh, I don't know what I can't remember the footage, but the master bedroom was downstairs. Four bedrooms and a game room upstairs.
All right.
And my office was just off the front door on the right when you come in the house, and it was and a pretty fair sized swimming pool in the backyard.
Man, getting to live like the $1 million man a little bit, but it's got to be weird as a wrestler when you buy a home and it's like, okay, we did it, we bought our dream home. Anyways, I'll see you in 2 months or whatever because you're back on the road again.
Yeah,
so like it's got to be hard for you.
Yeah, and again, a lot of those things, I wanted to make sure that my wife was not only comfortable, but is in a nice, safe neighborhood. No trouble, and it was kind of like. When you turn into this neighborhood, it's like this, maybe I'd say a quarter of a mile from the highway. And when you get back there and you make the first turn into the neighborhood, that first long, it's just like a quarter of a mile. So, and then you're in this really nice neighborhood with big houses everywhere. So,
man. Good spot.
Wanted to make sure that Mama was taken care of well.
Now, speaking of you being on the road and not really kind of getting to enjoy the fruits of your labor all the time, just because it was work back in those days. Like, how difficult was it for you? You had some young kids. Like, how difficult was it for you to, say, well, sorry guys, I have to go to the airport, because kids are inevitably going to ask, like, hey, when are you going to be home again? And you say, like, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks,
Yeah, well, that was hard. I mean, and I can tell you that, but my commitment to my boys, I mean, I can remember when they started, my boys got into soccer, and then later, I think Teddy played quarterback on the football team for a little while, but their big sport was soccer. And I don't know, just the Clinton community is like, you would think, okay, football, basketball, baseball, but soccer. But Clinton, Mississippi is known for its soccer teams, and so my boys played soccer. And I can remember, I can remember flying home from Los Angeles on a red eye. Left LA at midnight and flew to Atlanta. Got off one plane and then flew back to Jackson. Because you're coming from the West Coast, you fly right over Mississippi to Atlanta, and then fly back. And I would get home like maybe 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'm wiped out. But if they had a soccer game or any game, I was there. I mean, I would get in my car, instead of driving home and going to sleep, I went straight to the soccer game. So I wanted my boys to know that whenever I could be there, I was going to be there.
Man, good for you.
And I think I did a pretty good job.
Man, incredible sacrifices as a parent, and yeah, good to hear, because I'm sure that not a lot of guys felt the same way. They just want to get home and rest for a day or two before they got to get back out on the road. But man, putting the effort in, despite not being able to be home all the time, that's what being a dad is, man. Good for you.
Yeah.
RMT781 asks, I don't even know if you're going to have an answer for this. What's the setup like under the ring for guys that come out from under it for spots, and how long do they stay down there? I'm always amazed to see 6'10" Undertaker emerge at the end of a 3-hour show. Is he laying on a mattress down there or sitting on a chair the whole time?
That's a good question. I don't think anybody's ever been under. Well, I mean, there might have been an off occasion where somebody's going to sit under there, but have some kind of communication with somebody in the back as to know what was going on and when it was going on. But that's a good question. And a lot of times, with the managers or something, they'd walk out to the ring with their guy, and just duck under there, and all the fans would be screaming, "He's under the ring! He's under the ring! He's under the ring!" And the referee obviously, would look at them like they were crazy, and then whoever that manager was representing would be in the ring and say, "Look, he's not here. He's just, he's sick or something." And then at the right moment during the match, he comes out from under the ring and does what he's going to do.
I love that idea. That's kind of an old school thing that I haven't seen in many years. I'd love to see something like that happen in modern wrestling. I want to say that I've heard that there's a monitor under the ring, but I've never heard of what the setup might be like, because it's a good point. Like, is this guy just laying on? Because, you can't sit up. You couldn't be in a chair. So it's like, is this guy just laying on the floor?
Yeah, I mean, there's some, it's like when you walk up to the ring, and when I walk up to the ring, I'm, from the floor to where the mat is, it's this high.
Mm-hmm.
So you got four or 5 steps up there. So, you're not, when you're under that ring, it's not like you're, in a house in the crawl space. You got a little room under there to move around. And I can't recall ever anybody, whether they did or not, I don't know, but actually to have a monitor that they're watching. I would say that what they had was probably like a walkie-talkie or something, some way that they could, there was some way that they could be cued to do what they're going to do.
Man, it's an interesting business if you've got to lay there for 3 hours and wait for your turn to come out.
And even to the point where, like, for example, if the the guy that he's managing, gets hit and goes out on the floor or something, and he somehow manages to misstep or something and fall down and just kind of casually rolls, not all the way under, but just rolls under, head high, and just says, "Okay, it's coming," or whatever the signal was. I don't know.
Yeah, there's got to be some way to get the communication through. And who knows? I know that, like, referees nowadays wear earpieces, so there's probably a safe chance that the wrestlers today have got an earpiece while they're down there and they just listen. But yeah, I don't know. It's more than anything, I'm interested in, like, what is it? What do you even do down there? You just got to lay there and wait. It's it would be a bummer. Ed Trask is up next. Hey, Ted, always wondered what you guys called each other in the locker room. Do you use the character name or your real name? Was there etiquette as far as how new guys address the veterans?
No, we just called each other by name. And there was no, it wasn't like anything military or whatever. I just know that at least, when I was there, kind of like the old school way, if you're a rookie, if you're the new kid on the block, so to speak, It's basically yes sir and no sir, and then that's the other thing that young guys needed to learn is that, whether they realize it or not, everybody's watching them
Mm-hmm.
and to see what he's made of. And, and how is he going to, it's kind of like, if you're the new guy on the block, you don't want to come in there and, and take somebody's, locker room space or whatever. It's like we'd go to a lot of weeklies towns, right? And everybody seemed to have their spot. Not all the time, but and the one thing you dang sure wouldn't want to do is move somebody's stuff. If you were young and you're just starting, then you find a corner, get dressed, and don't speak unless you're spoken to. That's at the very beginning. That's just kind of like getting broken in, and and then guys, would watch you and say, okay, now he was on the first match. Now did he just get dressed and leave, or did he get dressed and go out and watch the other matches?
Mm.
Because if they know that you got dressed and you went and you watched the other matches, that you're actually trying to learn your trade, that you're not just like anxious to get on, but to get in there and get out of there because you're on the first match and make it to the bar before everybody.
Right. Man, it's interesting, all the etiquette stuff, and that's another thing I'm kind of learning as I go here. When it comes to handshakes, I know that handshakes are a big thing in wrestling, and especially if you're a new guy in the territory, you want to come in and shake everybody's hand and introduce yourself, and it's a sign of respect. At what point does that stop for you? So if you come to a new territory, you want to come up and introduce yourself to everybody. Is that every show, or is that just the first time you walk in the building?
I would say the first time, that you get there, you introduce yourself and everything, and then it's just kind of an informal thing, and you don't have to do it every time. It's not like it's not like the military. It's
right.
So no, it's not that bad.
Something else that fascinates me is the idea that somebody like you, Ted, by the time you got to Georgia, you had been working for quite a while, and you were what everybody would consider a ring veteran, but you're coming to a new territory. And let's say your second Georgia run, so 1983, you're coming from Mid-South. Now you're coming back to Georgia after being away for a while. For you, coming back in the door, you're an established ring veteran, but you're coming into a new territory. Do you defer to your opponent when it comes to calling the match, or how does that go?
No. I mean, if I'm a veteran and I've been in the business for, I don't care how many. I mean, generally speaking, the old school was the heel called the match.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I'm in the ring with a guy that's still a little wet behind the ears, and he's the heel, he ain't calling my match.
Okay.
I'll be calling the match that way. I mean, and that's just respect, for a much more established guy. So.
Now, were you like a see you in the ring kind of guy, or would you go over a few spots ahead of time and learn what the guy could do?
I was pretty much see you in the ring, but if I had a history with a guy, in other words, if it's the first time I'm ever wrestling the guy, I would sit down and first of all, kind of put him at ease, if he was, nervous or whatever. And, and I would just tell him, I'd say, kid, just listen to me out there. And, and because that's when I was the kid, that's what all the old timers said to me hey, just kid, just listen to me out there and we'll be okay. And, that's pretty much it.
I'm sure I'm gonna have more questions like that, certainly from our listeners, but also for me as we go. Just because for me right now, it's drinking water from a fire hose as I learn all this stuff. So I'm just trying to absorb as much as I possibly can. So it's those kind of small nuanced things are weighing it down.
But the other thing, Marcus, is I feel like the business has changed so much. I mean, we're talking old school. We're talking back before, the big, before Vince McMahon went international, national and international. And I'm talking about like, in the late '60s and the early '70s. Again, that respect was always there.
Mm.
I mean, and expected. And as time has gone on, not so much. I mean, you might introduce yourself to somebody you don't know. I would say that, it's like if I go in a dressing room and I'm a veteran and I sit down, it's like, and there's a new guy in there, I'm not going to go over there to him. I'm going to wait for him to come to me.
Yes.
That's just etiquette. That's just, old school.
And if the guy doesn't come to you, does he have heat with you right away?
Nah, I wouldn't say heat, but and of course, because a lot of times brand new guys, they're just nervous as hell in that dressing room, and I understand that. And I was never really that nervous. Number one, because I was raised in the business. Yeah. I knew a lot of those guys, when I first started, that were veterans that were in that dressing room. And the other thing is that I had always showed them respect. I mean, that was just me.
Interesting subject. I'm sure we'll touch on it more as the show goes on. James F. is up next. What did you think of Rick Rude? Did you have any interactions with him?
I never got to know Rick real, like we were never bosom buddies. We didn't, we didn't, call each other or whatever. But I mean, as business goes and we're on the road together and we're staying in the same hotels and stuff like that. And then, I'd see him at the show, and then I would see him again, at the hotel bar or whatever. Not a bad guy, I had no issues with him.
I've heard he was tough as nails kind of dude, not a man that you'd want to get on the wrong side of, but like generally speaking, just like a good guy. And man, and next to you, I think an argument could be made that he's one of the better heels ever in the WWF, because he's much like yourself. He was never a baby face there. He was always a heel.
Yeah.
Kevin Dobson is up next. What is your favorite interview that you ever did? So a lot of people have like a signature interview. Ted, do you feel like you have one that really kind of identifies you?
No. I mean, I couldn't. I did so many interviews. I did interviews when I was wrestling. I did a lot of the talking when I was out of the ring, and a manager. Because the manager is usually the guy that speaks for his protege. Mm-hmm. And then I even did a few interviews, like the last interviews I did were at NXT. So yeah, that's just impossible. I mean, it's kind of like it was like you go to work every day, okay. And there's things about your job that are always the same, and I think for most people there's things that are always changing, and again with interviews and stuff like that, we'll say, okay, I'm 70 years old now, and I stopped physically wrestling when I was 40, and I wrestled from the age of 21 until I was 40. Just about to turn 40, and that's when I started doing the managing and what have you. And they go and pick out an interview. No.
Just for fan perspective, because a lot of people are like, "Well, it was on TV, like it lives forever. You should remember this." It's like if let's say that you're a warehouse worker and somebody came up to you and said, "Hey, what do you think is the best truck that you unloaded?" You'd be like, I don't know. It's kind of like that. It's a thing that you did every day when you went to work. You're cutting a promo. All that being said, for me, it's probably if I had to pick like a signature kind of an interview that you did, probably the basketball moment, which you and I have talked about here on the show. That's one that gets brought up a lot.
Well, okay, now that's not an interview so much as that's
Segment.
when you say interview to me, it's either Gene Okerlund is there, whoever is got the microphone, puts the microphone in front of me, or I'm holding the microphone and I'm cutting an interview about my opponent.
Gotcha.
That's what I call an interview. Now the of all the skits that we did, with the $1 Million Man, me and the kid with the basketball is the one everybody remembers.
Yep.
And I don't know, do we need to run through that again? So whoever's listening that doesn't know.
Well, look, it's actually pinned on our YouTube page. You get the full story about that interview. So go to our YouTube page, youtube.com/@everybody's got a pod. Go and click that clip, and you'll get the full story from Ted on that interview. And yeah, really, it's like a lot of your moments were more like the vignettes that you did. You with the $1 Million belt, and you was going to the hospital to get a Band-Aid.
And all of those were done at the beginning. All of those vignettes were seen before the first time I walked out of a dressing room into the arena with, wearing tights and boots and going to a match. They already hated me. They put me out of the building because that's all they had seen is me and the, kicking the basketball with the kid, me, kicking the honeymoon couple out of their suite. I can't remember. Oh, and going to the doctor with a paper cut.
In the swimming pool, and there's
kicking all the kids out of the swimming. So that's I did enough for the people to hate me before they ever saw me.
And it's something that's really missing in wrestling today is vignettes.
Yeah.
I think that management thinks like, well, the internet is around, so fans are already familiar with these wrestlers. It's like they're familiar with maybe the work that they did in New Japan or in AEW, but when they come to WWE and you're trying to introduce us to a new character, you should really build that character up and kind of let us get to know who they are.
Yeah, I agree.
Chris Davies asks, you had a reputation as one of the best technical wrestlers of your era. Who, in your opinion, was the best technical wrestler that you ever worked with?
Ricky Steamboat.
I had a feeling it was going to be.
And I only had one match with him.
Wow.
But that one match set up a whole hell of a lot, man. I was so impressed with him. And again, we tore the house down, and we had never had a match ever anywhere. And I guess maybe one of the other guys that I could put on there would be, Ric Flair. Rick and I had a lot of matches, but when you were the world champion, as he ended up being, you were, you were wrestling every night. And this is the territory days. And so he would go to the territory, and the world champion was always a heel unless he was in his home territory. Rick's home territory was Charlotte, North Carolina. Now I'm not even sure that he was a babyface there. But everywhere else, the champion would go, and obviously, who do you want the world champion to face but your number one babyface?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why in the territory days, the champion was always a heel, and of course, as champion, you're the guy in controlling that match and calling everything.
Man, it's got to be interesting for a guy like Ric Flair with all of his experience, because in some of these territories, you're going to go work with a Ted DiBiase, or you're going to work with a Jake Roberts, or somebody who's on the same level as you are when it comes to experience.
And that's true, but by the same token, and again, I wrestled Rick when he was champion. I'm trying to think. It was a couple times. I can't remember where, but I was I was perfectly capable, but I mean, he's the champ, and so we bow to the champ. We do it his way, and so that's the other thing about being the champ. Uh, it's like you're going to have to be able to work with anybody, and you're gonna show up sometimes, and whoever that opponent is not as good as you would like him to be. Well, you got to help elevate him. Anyway, another message for another time.
That's it, though. And yeah, it's like you might work with a Ted DiBiase going to one territory. You might just work with some guy who just happens to be the top draw in whatever small territory you're in, and you've got to work with this guy.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting gig to be the champ. Taka Ozaka asks, what was Stan Hansen's reaction when you told him you were leaving All Japan for the WWF? So you've mentioned before that Stan put you in the position of Bruiser Brody, so he thought very highly of you, and you guys are going like gangbusters over there. You're a great compliment to each other, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, Stan, I'm leaving. How did that go?
Well, Stan understood, and I told Stan, I said, like, this is great. I mean, it couldn't be better, and I appreciate you picking me to be your champ. I mean, your partner, But I understood what I understood, and I wanted to make him understand is that, if I was going to stay relative in wrestling in my country, then I was going to have to make that move to the WWF. And that was the other thing is that the Giant Baba, he understood. And he said, and I thanked him. I thanked him so much because ultimately it was his decision to put me in a spot. And I was there couldn't have been, I was like, Stan Hansen was number one. I was number two.
Mm-hmm.
And we as a team were phenomenal. But Stan understood. And, the Giant Baba, I mean, he paid me the last night of that last tour, and he said, "Ted, you're welcome back anytime." And even to like, if it doesn't go well for you there, just call us. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
great spot to be in, and yeah, it's it would have been cool if Stan Hansen could have come to the WWF along with you, and who knows how that whole thing could have gone, but good that you had that experience and you guys made, to your point, made a hell of a team. Trevor Gaines has got an interesting one, similar to something that actually Jake and I talked about on Ask Jake Anything not too long ago. If a babyface isn't getting over with a live crowd, are there any methods they can use to turn things around? So, Ted, a good example of this is whenever I spoke to Jake about it, WWE was pushing John Cena really strongly, but the crowd kept booing him because they had seen so much of him. But, he's one of their top draws for children there, so they continue to push him as a babyface. Can you think of a way that a babyface can get the crowd to react the way that they want to?
Yeah, that's hard. That's a hard one for me. I mean, it's like, kind of like, now I've heard of the reverse. In other words, if you're a heel, but if you're okay, I'll give you an example. Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Mm-hmm.
When he started, he was a heel, right?
Yeah, the ringmaster.
He was the ringmaster, and I guess I was his manager for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But he was legitimately a tough guy. And people like tough guys. I mean, eventually a tough guy heel. Now I was the kind of heel you never, you always wanted to see somebody kick my ass because I was what we called the chicken shit heel. Mm-hmm. I was the guy who talked real big and then cowered in the corner like, don't hurt me. And so you never got tired of seeing him get his butt kicked. But if you were a tough guy heel, eventually the crowd's going to turn you. And that's what happened to Stone Cold because people like tough guys.
Whenever I ask Jake the question about like if fans are booing you, how do you get them to stop booing you? Can you, as a a ring veteran yourself, do you have any guess as to what Jake said about getting a crowd to stop booing you?
No.
He said, you do nothing. He said, you grab a hold and you lay in it until they stop. He was like, eventually they're going to stop and start cheering you because they want you to do something, because they paid for a ticket. He's like, all you have to do is grab a hold and wait, and they'll start cheering you on and trying to get you to stand back up. And I'm like, it's just funny, the Jake's little methods for getting things done out there.
Yeah, and and I think he's right. Yeah, I probably would have, and that's true.
One little trick to do it. I feel like it's a temporary fix, though. Like, they'll cheer you to get back up, but then if they don't like you, they'll just start booing you again.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too. Sometimes, if you get in a match and somebody's supposed to be the babyface, somebody's supposed to be the heel, and the crowd's just not taking it that way, then just switch and be the heel.
Ah, okay. So you're saying even if you're going to continue on as a babyface, just that night you work as a heel?
Well, I mean, yeah, if you're going to, I don't know. You would have to be a tough guy, though.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're a babyface and you're getting booed, you just start working heel, but you work like a tough guy heel.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't be a chicken shit heel. That won't work.
No.
Man, interesting little tricks there. Danny Kaiser, I guess is how you say it, asks, what was your all-time favorite WWF/WWE storyline you were involved in? I don't know if we've talked about that or not yet, Ted, but I have to imagine it's got to be that twin referee thing.
Wow. That was one of my favorites because it was the storyline that set my rocket on fire. Now I'm the heel. I'm the guy. I don't know. I can't remember how long it lasted, but I know I had a little run with Jake.
Yes.
I loved working with Jake because, again, we both were products of wrestling. We both had fathers who had been in the business, and we had the same. We understood the same psychology, and I think that's why we worked so well together.
The other thing about you and Jake was it was a cool storyline where you guys were programmed in early 1989. Jake had to leave because he had a neck injury and had to go get surgery on it. When he comes back, he blamed his neck injury on you, saying that you hurt him.
Yeah.
And then it leads into him stealing the $1 million belt. And, now he's got you saying he's going to make you grovel for the money that's your very own, that kind of thing. It was a really smartly done storyline, plus great work. And actually, we asked Jake on this past episode of Ask Jake Anything, Jake, what's your favorite WrestleMania match? He says, my favorite is probably me and Martel in the blindfold match, but the best match that I worked was with DiBiase.
Yeah. I agree.